So how long have you been discussing this? When did the discussion start?
So discussion actually started with the competition in 2020, where we had the development at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 21. But then and we had a presentation online because at the time we couldn't even be physically on post-COVID times. And it's been a little bit dormant until ARM put together the team, and it's been in development now for close to the past year of the master planning, where the result of the competition came, and we started working with ARM deeply on the meat of the master plan. Yeah.
So what stage in the whole process are you now?
Now we've delivered the CMP and we're starting a DMP. So where all the infrastructure is dimensioned, where all the development and park sizes and land use is dimensioned, and is more into the details of the infrastructure and specific micro developments within the clusters of housing and other programs.
Okay, well, let's dig into some of that in a little bit more detail.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to the Chief Development Officer of ARM Holding last week. He told me that the entire project will eventually house 50,000 residents. Tell me how that's going to be spread amongst different communities, villas and apartments. How's that going to be broken down?
So it's pretty much like the entire master plan is developed in neighborhoods of walkable communities. So we've sized, so there is a central park that is flanked by neighborhoods of walkable clusters, where there are 8 to 9 clusters where you can walk to the beginning and the end of each cluster. So that has been the dimensioning, which then translates into phasing, has been really creating communities that are walkable and livable without actually picking up your traditional vehicle, the car.
How do you make it walkable all year round?
So from different strategies, from actually measuring that typically you don't want to walk in extreme heat more than 5 minutes on each end. So you make an edge to edge an 8 minutes to 12 minutes walkable cluster, but also to ensure that the urban fabric is dimensioned so that you're constantly shaded by nature or by buildings. So it is both by designing the streetscape typology and by designing the type of cluster where all functions that make life meaningful are clustered in.
How will the streets be designed to make them less about cars and more about other forms of transport?
So we have a hierarchy of streetscapes that are, of course, more designed. There are 2 main streetscapes that are designed to actually take the car flow and distribute the car flow throughout clusters. But then there are other streetscapes that are really more focused on sheltering human flow and the vehicular transport that is shared, that is sustainable, that is automated, and then even smaller streets that are tailored for bike riding and for walkability. And so they all have different sections to ensure urban comfort. So within the design of the master plan, the average temperature in relation to the rest of Dubai drops 5 degrees because of the entire sheltering, natural sheltering and passive strategies within the master plan.
You mentioned the automated public transport there. Tell me more about what you're designing for, how you see that looking.
And so we're still under process with different under development with different possible stakeholders. But there is one large infrastructural loop where is the Green Boulevard, where we have a continuous loop of shared piece of infrastructure that is automated, that is just rolls almost like a bus does that has a predefined route. But then there's a second layer of smaller pods that we're also investigating with different partners, that those actually are more individual or smaller sharing, where they can also navigate through the park. So they can actually shortcut through different neighborhoods. So you actually, even if you have to visit your colleague or your friend in a cluster that is 3 clusters away, you don't need to take the car, but you can actually shortcut either by that pod or by bike or by horse, if you have your horse parked in your own stable.
Horse?
Yeah, because ultimately the master plan is at the heart, the cornerstone of the site, which is the Jebel Ali Racecourse. So equestrian has been, the equestrian lifestyle has been the backbone of everything we do. So the design of the park has at the very center the Jebel Ali Racecourse, but also has the stables, has also not only the competition stables, but also leisure stables, where it's also meant to educate. So having a ludic and enjoyable educational capacity or element there for related with equestrian heritage. And also because ultimately in healthcare, horses are more and more used for recovery. So that has also like been something that that is a part of that well-being, a backbone related with equestrian lifestyle. Yeah.
What else are you putting in the park?
In the park, many things. So for instance, another key element aside from the horses is the water. It is a depression that exists on site, that when it rains, it becomes a quasi-lake. So the entire design has been accommodated so that at the center of the training track, it is that depression. So when it rains, it becomes a lake. It becomes also an enjoyable area. So the park has almost like the highest point on site where the current racetrack is and where we will be focusing on building the experience center. And then as also it's almost like yin yang. It has the hill and it has the depression. We're also then developing a different area with the training track, but also an area of more water-related activities in the park. So that also differentiates the different uses that you have and experiences across the park. They're also opposites. In some areas, you're with a view, surrounding view through the greenery. In other areas, you're in the water.
When we were speaking to ARM, they spoke about low density, mid-rise, low rise. How much space can you actually give residents for their own homes?
Actually, it's if you think from the genesis of the design of master planning, you can actually retrieve far more qualities to all the different typologies, and it's the combination that actually enables us to create views pretty much for all. So because rather than segregating, doing what is typical in Dubai, either high density or low density in different compounds, here the mixed use actually enables us to have views from the low scale of the high-end villas that face the park towards the high-rise villas. So each bubble of living is a mixed development where the scale increases as the bubble goes to the center. So at the center of each neighborhood, there's more density because everyone has terraces and views at 360 degrees. And the scale decreases as you arrive closer to the park. So that ensures that everyone in each typology actually have views and relationships towards the park. Everyone has daylight and everyone has that same life quality regardless of where you live.
I understand we're going to have some office space in there as well. Is that going to be woven through the residences? Is there going to be an office park? What's the plan?
It's a little bit of both. So there are areas where we're also focusing more on creating almost like a working hub. So because in a day-to-day life, I mean, we've all learned post-COVID that there's the possibility of working at home, but we also, as time passes, we also realized that we also need our daily routines and to encounter with someone else in a work-defined space. So the master plan actually enables that duality. Each cluster has smaller office spaces, but the entire master plan also has one, almost like a cluster that is dedicated to that specific program of working. So you can either just walk downstairs and work, or you can actually pick up your bike or pick up the shared vehicle and go to the cluster of where office developments are more focused and condensed, because there's also obvious synergies and advantages from having clusters of working altogether.
I have to ask you what an urban farm is.
An urban farm? So an urban farm is where you actually harvest goods in an efficient manner. So like, of course, here we have a vertical urban farm in one area of the master plan where you can actually densify and optimize the growth of agricultural products, where typically products are depending on year stations because they're depending on the sun, they're depending on day and night, etc. In an urban farm, you always have the optimal climate conditions so that growth is accelerated and optimized. And because then you also have a roofscape that in Dubai can also harvest energy, you can always climatize it in a sustainable manner to the ideal conditions of the species inside.
What does all of what you're describing do to the cost of building, particularly given the high materials costs that we're looking at the moment?
We're also looking at there's always a balance between investment and return on investment, right? And here we're also looking into a series of different strategies on how to build with, of course, gradually with incremental low CO2 footprint materialities, right? And across the different phases, because now our resources in the first phase will be different than the resources in the future phase. We also discussed that maybe the future phases could become nurseries for the wood that later on we could use later on in building materialities for other phases. So I think all of that is part of a process that we're thinking and developing still in these phases. But ultimately, like the return of investment is always there when you create life quality. So there's always a race to the top when you're giving a more humane and biophilic and nature-based world back to people.
So what's the timeline for key measurables? What dates should we be looking out for?
And so each phase, the later phases, they really depend on also how the markets evolve, etc. But the first phase is really looking into breaking ground towards next year, towards the end of 26, and then each phase will take, because each phase is fairly large, still will take like 3, 4, 5 years of development until it solidifies each one of the bubbles, and then they will continue developing phased in a series of different phases across the next a couple of decades, because it is in the end still 5 square kilometers of land, 1.5 kilometer of park. It is a chunk of city that we're building here.
It is a chunk of city. Before I let you go, can you tell me what's going to be in that first phase?
The first phase is all the ingredients are already there. Everything that makes life meaningful is already there, because each phase actually contains that same mix. Contains your own home, contains your own restaurants, contains your own office, contains your kindergarten. So meaning that you go to work, you drop your child, and you go to the park, you pick them up and go to the park at the end of the day. So all of those elements will already be present from the get-go, from the first phase.